This is the Body Fuel Performance and Lifestyle Nutrition Podcast. We're here to help you navigate all things nutrition, especially for sports performance, weight loss, and healthy eating. I'm your host, Andrew Dole, registered dietitian, certified executive chef, and USA triathlon coach. Here we go. Have you ever wondered how an athlete decides how much fluid they should drink in an hour, especially a multi-sport or an endurance athlete who's out for 2, 3, 4, even 8 hours at a time? In this episode, we talk about sweat volume tests, how to use it, and how to get your fluid on par with a hydration strategy. Following, we talk about a STRYD footpod review. If you're looking to improve your running, speed, and pace accuracy, it certainly helps. And I'll do a quick review of how I found this to be an amazing tool. So keep listening, and we'll get to both. So I'm not green screening today. You have a wonderful view of my library and products in the back. Don't let it distract you, because if you have ever been wondering how a sports dietitian or an athlete determines how much fluid they drink during racing or training, I'm going to explain it all right here. We use a sweat volume test. It is very simple and very inexpensive, which makes it super valuable. On the left-hand side, you can see the hydration chart that I provide my athletes. Let me tell you how often we do this. I recommend 3 or 4 times per year, and this is why. As you become more fit, you sweat more. And later in the season, you're going to need more fluid. As the temperature changes, you're going to sweat more. And as it gets hotter, we need to know how to adjust our fueling and hydration strategies, which are oftentimes paired together for hotter race environments. I don't want to give you 60 or 70 degree recommendations when you're racing in Arizona or Texas at 90 degrees with tons of humidity. We need to have that data, and the more often we can put ourselves in those race-specific environments and train our hydration and our fueling, the better data we can have for race day. That being said, there are 6 blocks here on the page to use all throughout the year. I recommend the sports, all of them. If you're swimming, if you're biking, if you're running, do a sweat test at least a couple times per year and understand how your fluid needs have changed. Best practices. This is not a hard test, but there are some things that can make it easier and more convenient and more consistent. The first one is when you're doing your pre-workout weight, make sure you have voided, go pee, have a bowel movement, make sure you've eaten breakfast well in advance, step on the scale, log your weight. Go work out for 60 to 90 minutes. That time duration for a moderate intensity workout is reasonable to not have any food and not have any fluid. The reason why I recommend no food or fluid is because we don't want to complicate the process of adjusting for weight. It's simpler to just go do the workout. Then when you are done, get off, go upstairs or wherever your scale is, strip off that sweat-soaked clothing so it doesn't account or mess up our weight. Take your weight. Then we're going to take your starting weight and subtract the ending weight, and we're going to get a number. And that's how much you lost. And the best practices here is just don't monkey with a water bottle. You don't want to have to weigh how much fluid you had, how much was left. It's just easier to not use it. Duration of exercise is important so that you can calculate your fluid loss for the right amount of time. And the type of exercise for a multi-sport athlete is exceptionally important, especially for me working with an athlete to understand how we adjust certain strategies on the bike and the run. Why it's important. The reason why individualized hydration is super important is because the guidelines for hydration that are out by various professional organizations is very generic. It's sort of like the government's DRI and RDIs. They're meant for survival. Example, for nutrition, it says you need such and such vitamin C in your diet, this much vitamin D, via iodine, this much protein, and they're meant to prevent deficiencies, and that's great, but it's not built for optimal or performance nutrition. And as we look for performance nutrition, everybody is different. There is no standardized individual. And let me give you an example. In a couple studies, and one in particular, 500 athletes with a varying range of training durations, anywhere from a half an hour to 5 hours, and the average time was 1.6. hours in duration. The sweat rate of all 500 of these athletes over those different times was vast. It was 17 to 84 ounces, a half a liter to 2.5 liters. That's massive. As a multi-sport or endurance athlete, we know that we were outside anywhere from 30 minutes to 8 to 11 hours. Understanding how much fluid we lose is increasingly important the longer we go. The extreme ranges for that study was up to 192 ounces. So there are outliers, and you may be it or you may not, but you may sweat an inordinate amount of fluid. And if you don't test for this, then you don't know. Let's put that in perspective, because on average, if it was 17 to 84 ounces, a half gallon is 64 ounces. Now name me how many times that you know that you've been out training, riding your bike, riding with some coach, or a really great rider. You're out for 2.5 hours and they carried one 16-ounce bottle with them of fluid. Completely inappropriate. Triathletes are the worst. I go on these really long bricks, they say, and I can't stop and get enough fluid, and I only have 2 water bottle cages on my bottle. That's 48 ounces at the most. Never mind they needed 48 ounces every hour. Yes, it is absolutely realistic. So the average sweat rate in general for an athlete outside is about 27 to 47 ounces. Now that is very generic. So it's safe to say that about 1 to 1.5 liters per hour of sweat loss is pretty normative. Body size does matter. So if you were losing 1.5 liters, but you're a 5'3" female, that's probably heavy. Heavy sweating. If you're a 6'6", 225, 240 pound athlete losing 1.5 liters per hour, I'd say you were on the low side. So size does make a difference. Gender can make a bit of a difference. Age most definitely makes a difference. And I'm not going to talk about adolescent athletes here, but for you parents out there, just so you know, young adolescents don't sweat as well as adults. They regulate their body temperature very differently. And I'll probably do a podcast on that here soon. Therefore, what? So what do you do with this individualized hydration chart? Well, number one is you want to do a sweat volume test so that you can start early in the season drinking the appropriate amount of fluid to train your GI to tolerate it, so that you don't feel as though you have this sloshy feeling in your stomach when you're taking in small amounts of fluid. There are great articles about training the GI, and I think it's just as important as training the body for any sport. Step number 2, after you've done a sweat volume test and you've got a good indication of how much fluid you should be drinking per hour, your sweat concentration is important. Now that's moving on to some of the finer details. How much sodium are you losing in that liter of sweat? If you're a really heavy sweat loss, you may need to increase the amount of sodium in your hydration fluid. I would say on average, through most of the athletes I have worked with, their sweat range is handled by most of the products out there today. Scratch, Gatorade Endurance. They usually have enough milligrams of sodium per hour that it's not something you really need to take salt tabs for. I've talked about salt tabs in other videos where I don't believe they're the best opportunity, but if you feel as though you're a heavy salt sweater and you have white rings and are very gritty, a sweat concentration test is something I do recommend for those athletes, and I can do that with you. What not to do with a sweat hydration test is not to try to drink a 1-to-1 ratio. If you feel that you lose 2 pounds per hour, the goal is to not go in and drink 32 ounces of water right away. We don't want to put back exactly how much we lose. At some point, it's almost impossible. Hyperhydration is just as bad as hypohydration. There is a fine balance between taking what you lose and how much you take in because of gastric emptying rate. The concentration and osmolality of the hydration fluid you're drinking. And then this is where providing you as a sports dietitian that information and data helps fine-tune what your fueling and hydration strategy really is. But the foundation is the hydration sweat volume test. It's a great place to get started. It's a way better place for an individual to work on their needs versus saying, hey, I want you to drink 4 to 6 or 6 to 8 ounces of fluid per hour. and it may not cut it for you. Now, if you've enjoyed this information, stay put, because in the next couple seconds, I'm going to switch over and we're going to talk about the STRYD footpod. I had an opportunity to start running with that last year, raced on it with it a couple times, and I got to tell you, it's improved my race paces and training considerably, and I can't wait to tell you about it. So hang on. The STRYD footpod. I love this thing. I want to show you how easy it is to use and why I love it so much. This guy is the size of a quarter. It is super tiny. It weighs less than 10 grams. A quarter weighs 10 grams. This weighs less. You're never going to know that it's on your foot. It connects easily. Get my hands out of the way. Right here, that's the bracket. This guy pops right inside, snaps down, and it locks the shoelace in between. I have some concerns that it was going to pop loose. It didn't. I've run some pretty crazy terrain, put a couple 100 miles with this thing on my shoe, and I've never even come loose. I have no fear that this is going to come off, nor have I heard of anyone telling me that it has. And it goes back pretty quick. See if I can do this, keeping my hands out of the way. Snap, done. How easy does it come out? Just pull that front tab down, pop it out. How does it recharge? USB charger, snaps right in. Plug it in anywhere. Plug it in into your car. Plug it into your phone charger. Makes no difference. Okay, so what I have up on the screen is the STRYD app from my phone on the left-hand side. You'll notice my last run was December 11th. I want to point out that I use this every time I run 4 to 5 times per week. I haven't gone that long without it. I'll get more into why it shows the 11th. It's really easy to check the battery. If I go up to the top, I can check battery right here. Tells me it's at 90%. I have to be really honest. I am terrible at plugging things in or making sure the USB is connected where it needs to go. And I have not been able to run this thing down, running 4, 5, 6 times per week, average 5 to 10 miles, 8 miles on average. I've gotten it down to 62%, I think, once. It charges exceptionally fast. I haven't been able to run it down. As you noticed in the first part of this segment, it connects really easy. I'm not worried about getting lost. Doesn't have any weight on my foot. I can't tell that it's even there. I love it. So the STRYD, what is it? It's a foot pod, and it's meant to tell you the power that you're running and give you an accurate pace. Why I have it, initially I bought it so I could run with Zwift. I wanted to do something inside. I'd already cycled with Zwift. I used my treadmill. I needed to, running inside on a treadmill is like digging my eyeball out with a spoon. I needed to change it. I calibrated it. I started running with it, and I have a lot of fun. It's entertaining, I should say. That was my initial purchase. Why I use it now. I use the foot pod for run accuracy. My run paces are so on point at the moment. The last 3 years, I'd been running with my Phoenix on my arm, inside, outside. Paces were maybe accurate, maybe. I'm inside on the treadmill with indoor run, not even close. The faster I moved my arm, the faster I ran. The slower I stopped my arm to use my water bottle and my paces dropped. It was the most inaccurate thing on the planet. I do not want to pay someone to come calibrate my treadmill all the time. It's expensive. It's just kind of hassle, and I'm not going to do it. The STRYD eliminates all of that. So I started training with the STRYD about the end or the beginning of last summer, and I had been running from January all the way through May. I start running with May with the STRYD on calibrated to Zwift, and I noticed that I'm running not even close to the paces that I thought. We're talking 20, 30, 40 seconds off what I thought or what I should have been doing. Kind of explains some race performances. I run with STRYD, and I got to tell you, my first Olympic distance, I have a negative split on the back half of the run. I run it with half Ironman Boulder, and my run pace is solid. I think I was 10 minutes slower than my overall PR on a half marathon. I was very thrilled with it. And it comes in 2 versions. Right now on Get My STRYD Worldwide, if you're looking at the screen, you'll see that it's $199. When I purchased it, there was two versions. There was a $99 version and a $199 version. They were both the same footpod, and all you had to do was pay the extra $100 to get the firmware upgrade so that you could then run with power. If you bought the $99, it was, I don't want to say a dumb footpod, but it didn't have the power software and you didn't have access to that. Right now, it's almost always on back order, and it's $199, and I can't find where you purchased the $99 version. The question would be, would I buy it at $199, knowing what I know, having used it since May? Absolutely. Because of the accuracy and run, even outside and inside, my ability to nail down a pace and say, if I have to run a 7-minute mile, whatever it is, I know I'm hitting it. I know I'm getting it. Consistency is impressive, and we know that consistency with training is probably one of the most important aspects. I would absolutely pay $199. Do I use the power function? No, I don't. I don't believe that power on my running is like power with cycling. Not at all. There is no force equivalent. It's not telling me how hard I'm hitting the ground and how much I'm pushing back, which, interestingly enough, the fastest people in the world who are running the 100 meter, like Usain Bolt, those guys are, exercise physiologists have them running on treadmills that are actually taking the power of their impact. And the faster they go, the more impact they're putting in. And that's what allows them to go the fastest. These guys are putting down so much power into the ground that's propelling them forward. That's not what the STRYD does. STRYD has no means to tell you how much power you're putting out, like a power meter on your bike. It's really very closely associated with pace. And because it's associated with pace, meaning the faster I run, the more power I put out, there's no reason in my mind right now to use the power function. What wins races is the pace. If you're going to go out and the field is running 6-minute miles and you need to be running 6-minute miles, that's kind of all there is to it. Running power isn't going to help you. I use heart rate when I'm running to stay below for easy runs, and then I use paces for everything above zone 2. There are some books that are out right now that tell you how to run with power, but it's the equivalent of running with heart rate and or pace, depending on what you're trying to do. So no, I don't use power right now. Will I? Maybe. I'll read the books and we'll see how the software, the technology improves, or if it makes a difference, but I don't believe it. I think pace rules all at the moment, and you either run at it or you don't. Power is not really what I'm going to use. Pace versus power with running anyway. Look, like I said, if you need to run a 6-minute mile, you need to run a 6-minute mile. 285 watts or your running power isn't going to get you there. Can you run real time? Yeah, there actually are some on your Phoenix. There are some apps on your watch, so you can actually run and look down and say, hey, I'm running at 241 watts. Great, that's fantastic. But it's most likely going to correlate with the pace you should have been doing. So kind of reinventing the wheel there is a little difficult. People already have a watch. It's easier as a triathlon coach or a running coach. I just think, hey, it's already there with your paces. Let's just use it. I don't need another screen for wattage until the science improves. I'm not sure that it's something that I would follow. But if you're looking for more information, I do encourage you to go to the STRYD blog and read it for yourself. Yeah, I buy it. That's the bottom line. Therefore, what? Pick up a STRYD. I think this early in the season to get your paces on par, doing what you think you're doing or you're supposed to be doing, would be a good start to hitting your personal records. I don't think the wattage function is absolutely fantastic, but I can't speak enough or say enough about how much fun this has made running indoors, how accurate it has been for my paces indoors and outdoors. I think for $199, it's worth it if you really care about improving your run. If you like this video cast, please refer a friend and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can request access to our closed Facebook group at Body Fuel Multisport. I'm Andrew Dole, and thanks for watching.